guys, today we're going to talk about two iconic characters that we all know. The first one is Eddy from the brilliant metal band Iron Maiden. Who doesn't know Eddy? And the second one is someone that resembles him a lot. It's Kark actually resembles him more than the character that I'm gonna propose here, Skeletor, but there are a lot of similarities. Like you guys might know, both Eddy and Skeletor have been created end of the 70s, early 80s. Eddy is actually a pretty cool story. Iron Maiden used to perform with a mascot of what would later become Eddy on stage. And when their manager said, you guys need something to represent you, something for people to remember, they created Eddy based on that backdrop basically that they used. And illustrator Derek Riggs did that, and he did an amazing job. We all know Eddy, we all know his incarnations, and more about that later. At the same time, Skeletor was being drawn by Mark Taylor, but originally it wasn't Skeletor that he was drawing. He was drawing the enemy of Viker that would eventually become He-Man. And he drew some kind of a zombie-like character. And we now refer to him as Demo Man. He wasn't called like that originally, but he wasn't quite a skeleton. He was more a zombie-like creature, and eventually he turned out to be the villain we all love, called Skeletor. One of the final versions of Skeletor was, for example, drawn by Alcala, one of my favorite Skeletors, but also the box art of, for example, Landshark. A beautiful drawing by William George displays Skeletor as this evil villain that still resembles the toy a lot. So what about Eddy? Well, I've got a couple of the albums here at this point, and as you can see, Eddy has been drawn in various forms. All of these have been done by the great Derek Riggs. And as you can see, Eddy is such a big part of Iron Maiden. Everybody will recognize this figure. If you base a comparison purely on the looks, you could state that Eddy looks more like Tex Hex, for example, from the awesome line Bravestar, or maybe a little bit like Mumra. But the cool thing about Eddy, as well as Skeletor, is that they adapt to their environment. And that's a super cool trick that both Iron Maiden as well as Mattel used. And that is what creates an iconic character. Eddy kind of fits in any scene, just like Skeletor. Look at all the different versions we have. Who doesn't love this one? Dragon Blaster Skeletor. Skeletor decides to carry a cute little dragon on his back. Well, Eddy had a similar idea, except he turned it around. He's riding this huge dragon, but hey, great minds think alike. With the new adventures, we see quite a different Skeletor. A Skeletor that actually has some sci-fi elements. We just see the same thing in Somewhere in Time of Iron Maiden. And the cool thing to me is that around 86, 87, 88, you would see a lot of sci-fi stuff implemented in these figures, but also in the Iron Maiden cover of Somewhere in Time. Look at this laser light Skeletor. Could he battle the Somewhere in Time cyborg Eddy? Of course, most of the time Eddy wins in the hair department, but even that was different at the time of the new adventures when Mattel released Battle Blade Skeletor, one of the most evil looking Skeletor figures in my opinion, because what's going on in the back of this head? Yep, he actually's got some hair growing there. Not as much as Eddy, but he was definitely an inspiration. And even now, in this time, we see comparisons between Eddy and Skeletor. Look at this 200X samurai Skeletor. Look at those details. You know, when you put them all together, it might be a little bit too much, but when you look at those figures alone, wow. And then look at the new Iron Maiden album, Senjutsu. I hope I'm pronouncing it the right way. And look at the Eddy with the samurai clothes. I mean, it's so cool. They keep reinventing the character, and that's exactly what Mattel did with Skeletor. And what about Power Slave? Look at that fantastic Egyptian artwork. Possessed Skeletor would have fit perfectly there. When I look at all these amazing Iron Maiden covers with all these super cool Eddies and all these variants of Skeletor throughout the years, it immediately brings me back to my childhood, where I didn't quite know what Iron Maiden was, but I knew the artwork, I saw the posters, and I knew I would love it. It's the mystique behind this character, behind Eddy. It has the same mystique of Skeletor. It's the villain that we all love. It's the figure that we need to kind of dream away in a different world. And both of those figures are iconic to me. The magic of Masters of the Universe and the magic of metal has so many connections. It is so cool that those evil beings, those unknown creatures, that they have such an attraction to us. We want to know more about them. And especially when they adapt to their environment, when they become reinvented, they become iconic. And to me, that had a huge influence. Skeletor, of course, in the 80s when I was a kid. Eddy, when I was on my way to adolescence, when I discovered metal. But it was the same kind of magic to see him change. And as I said, I already saw Eddy in the 80s. I even heard the Evil That Men Do play on the radio when I was playing with my He-Man figures. And that's on my favorite album, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, my absolute favorite Iron Maiden album, probably because of the 80s atmosphere and the epic storytelling. But it led to a cover that we did with After Forever on our mini album Exordium, and it was so cool to play The Evil That Men Do live. So my absolute favorite Iron Maiden album is Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. My absolute favorite Skeletor is Dragon Blaster Skeletor. I just think this figure has a unique style, super cool action feature, and it just works as a whole. So thanks for watching. It was super fun to take the figures out again, to check out Iron Maiden again, and it brought me totally back to my childhood and my road to the metal scene. See you next time.